Thank you for staying with us, everyone. During the past week, the National Bureau of Statistics released the data which is not shocking but disappointing. The report says a total of 7.956 million Nigerians became unemployed between January 2016 and September 30, 2017. Well, between January and September this year, 4.07 million Nigerians became unemployed. Look at the figures that we've broken down for you based on what the National Bureau of Statistics have released. And it does mean that if you look at the first quarter, the job loss was 11.92 million. Second quarter, 13.58 million. It's rising negatively, though. Third quarter, 15.99 million. Look at the percentage of the losses now. From fourth quarter of 2016, it's 14.2% in the rate of unemployment. And in the Q2 of 2017, 16.2%, and sadly, 18.8% in Q3 of 2017. Let's allow Mr. Muda Yusuf to make sense of what this means altogether for Nigerians when we say we're out of recession and we're seeing these kind of figures. What does it mean?
Well, it's quite disturbing that the figures are what they are. But we have to also put this in context. First of all, between January and September, I mean the review period for this report, I imagine that some jobs will have been created. You know, that is not reflected in this report. At least for balance, we should also have had some figures of how much jobs have been created. Because I know that within the year, there has been some improvement in some macroeconomic indicators. The challenges in the forex market had reduced substantially. The access to liquidity in the foreign exchange market also improved. Many more manufacturers are now back in production. So there has been some improvement. But the issue is that coming from the recession period, there has been a lot of challenges in the non-oil sector particularly. If you look at the growth numbers, even when we are celebrating the exit from recession, there were still contractions in the non-oil sector of the economy. In the last result of NP and the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics that was released, whereas we had a growth of about 25% in the oil sector, we had a contraction in the non-oil sector of about 0.8%.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yes. So that means that the non-oil sector, and that is where we create most of the jobs. Yeah. So there are still challenges in the non-oil sector.
The NBS did say yes, in its report that the growth expectations, the job expectation was quite low because though we are out of recession, but it just were not as they were not coming as much as expected. Yes. It does reflect in the NBS report. But the question now is the expectations, the political burden on the government like the APC, which made a lot of promises, went into recession, and at this point in time, what should they be doing, politically speaking, to get the jobs back and to keep hopes alive in this kind of situation?
You see, jobs come from investment. It comes from domestic investments. It comes from foreign investment. So you need policies to drive job creation. That is the way it works. So we need to look at the broad spectrum of policy instruments.
But how is the government responding to some of this policy?
Well, the government is responding, at least as far as I can see. I mean, we talk about this ease of doing business thing. We have a whole secretariat for Presidential Enabling Council on ease of doing business. The Vice President has been holding regular consultations with the private sector on how to knock down all the key barriers to business and improve the business environment. We have seen, at least if you look at the World Bank report, some improvement in the ranking in the ease of doing business. But the issue is that the bottlenecks that the private sector faces, many of them are structural. Quite a lot has to do with infrastructure. And infrastructure you cannot fix so quickly. It takes time to fix infrastructure, especially when you don't have the resources. So we need to deal with those issues. We need to deal with issues of mobilizing resources, particularly from the private sector, to be able to deal with all these gaps in infrastructure, because the budget alone cannot fix infrastructure. So there has to be policies to attract private sector capital to fix infrastructure. That is very key. Then, of course, domestic investment. You need to look at monetary policy. You need to look at interest rate policy. You need to look at our tariff policy. These are policy instruments that can be used to also stimulate investment.
A lot on the hands of the government of the day. Let's allow Mr. Inyang to talk to Wayne on this one. Party promises on one hand. When political parties get into government, that's another kettle of fish altogether. As it stands right now, the willpower and, well, the looming 2019 election, well, the eve is here. In another few days, we enter into 2018, and it's going to be politicking all through the year. What do you see, especially with these figures that we have from the NBS?
The very first thing I see is that Nigerians have to come to terms with certain realities. Those realities is that if a man says, I'm going to lift this car with my hands, I expect us as human beings to do due diligence to find out if the man actually understands the weight of the car relative to his capacity, and to see if what he is saying makes logical sense or not. We have a country where we have a lot of intellectual, cerebral people. Even in the villages, we have a lot of reasonable people. We have a lot of thinking people as Nigerians. But we have been bitten by this bug that when it comes to politics, we tend to suspend our brain and move as if we are zombies, as if there's a spell cast over us. You see, as much as I want to be sympathetic to APC, what I want to ask myself is, were they not aware of the signs of the times? What was their engine room doing? There should have been A, B, C. There's the engine room of politicking. How can we get power? How do we do this? How do we strategize? There should be the second engine room of what are the situations when we get into power? What can we do? What can we not do? And then there's the engine room of C, which has to do with communication and interface with the people. All these three have to be working at the same time. So when you come into the situation that we face ourselves today, and God has given you the privilege of seizing power, there are certain things, when the indicators are there that we're moving towards recession, there are certain things you just don't do. There are certain laws you don't break. That's not the time for you to tighten certain buttons. Even when you want to fight corruption, you have to be extremely strategic in your approach so that you do not stifle the inflow of funds, because even me as an architect, I can tell you for free that I know that for you to get out of recession, you need a lot of injection of funds into the system. So what was the strategy number one? But we are where we are today. All I can say to Nigerians is that as we walk towards 2019, please let us ask questions. Enough of being taken as if we really don't have the mind, we cannot think. Today they are saying, well, let me not get into that. But coming into the figures released, my brother in the studio has said that the report ought to have been balanced. But I think that the balancing could probably have been more embarrassing, because if you told the people you're going to create 3 million jobs per year, and then you now give a report that says 300,000, 500,000 has been created, jobs have been created. You give the opponent, the opposition, a tool to say, look, you promised us 3 million, you've only delivered. So the silence could be golden, except a situation where they think that they've created so much, which I have a lot of concerns over. I believe that APC has the capacity to do much more than it has done. I believe that the president is not being as careful as he ought to be with his team, such that we play down on the politics, work on the factors available to us. Let me give you a very simple, elementary, basic possibility. Everybody knows that one of the largest creators of jobs is construction. Everybody knows that. It's global. Let me give you a little example. I did the Shelter Africa estate in Akwa Ibom State. An estate of 300 houses employed over 10,000 people. Today, I'm doing another estate. We are starting with less than 100 houses. You go to that place on Tuesday morning, you'll see a market. You'll see a thriving setup. And it's going to be like that for the next 1 year. The crime rate in that place has dropped. If you are bringing $1 billion to fight insurgency and to fight all these other things, all I'm asking you, please give me $5 billion, put it into housing per state, and we'll give you a model. And it's going to be much, much, much less than what you have. Then when the people in the Northeast have been turned into a construction site, when all the young people are engaged working on a daily basis, at night they are so tired, they want to go and sleep and come back in the morning. By the time that this happens, two things happen. Number one, crime rate falls. Number two, these people are able to make money on a daily basis. As a result, they cannot be easy recruits. Number three, they don't want the system to be in any way, tampered with, because they see their money that they're making on a daily basis going. They don't want any problems. So they become the police that you are looking for.
Because we need to move into yet another... sorry, if I may quickly come in here, because we need to move into a very important issue for a lot of people who have not yet collected their December salaries and are working in several states of the country.